Good morning, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to our weekly flow. Today, we are going to be talking about Ford, and we are also going to be talking about engagement. We're happy to have you here either live or watching our recorded video. Today, we're going to have three outcomes. The first one is you will learn the Ford method that bases conversation around a set of topics. You will learn that these topics are usually universal and they work in almost all situations. And you will learn that questions become more specific when you get to know people better. In the first 15 minutes of our class today, we're going to talk about the acronym Ford, what it stands for and why it's important. In the next 15 minutes, we'll talk about the art of engagement and why it's key to maintaining client relationships and growing your business. And in the final 15 minutes, we'll do questions and answers. So let's get started. So Ford is something that we like to base our conversations around. And it's a set of talking points that are universal for most people. It really is taking four things, four ideas, four talking points that we can base our conversations on. And it allows us to get to know people better as we go through these questions. One thing I want to say is you don't have to use all four of these question types when you're speaking to people. You can just use one or two, gets the conversation started, and you can keep going with that conversation. So the F in Ford is family. Most people have a family. Most people have people in their family that they can talk about or want to talk about. And for a lot of people, family maybe isn't blood relatives, but it may be really good friends. For a lot of people, actually, pets are part of their family. So they may even be talking about their dog or cat or gorilla or whatever pets they have. So when you're talking about family, some of the questions that you may want to use are something like, do you have any siblings? These are questions, especially as you're just starting to get to know people and starting to begin a rapport with them. If you're meeting a couple, you might want to say, so how did you two meet? Or how long have you two been together? That gets them talking about themselves again, where they met. Usually it's a funny story, like I don't know, whale that's beached itself on a beach, whatever that story is. And if they have kids, you might want to say, so how old are your kids? What grades are they in? What do they like to do? Or maybe I heard that your sister got married. How was that? Did you have a good time? There are some questions, though, that you want to avoid when you're talking about families. If you're meeting with a couple, you probably don't want to say, so are you going to have children, or when are you going to have children? You might want to say, I know that you and Chris have been together for a long time. Are you going to get married? Are you going to move in together? What's your relationship like with your parents? That can be a tough one for some people. Or why is it that you and Pat don't get along? So it's those types of things that you don't want to get into confrontational questions, especially when you're first just getting to know somebody. As time goes by and you get to know them better, obviously those things may come out. So our next area is occupation. And occupation, most people work or have worked at some point. And most of us spend a long, bulky part of our day at work. So some of these questions are pretty foolproof when talking to somebody. The most common and often first asked question when you meet somebody is, what do you do for a living? And that's always good to know, just to get to know kind of what their skill set is. And that can be taken into a whole bunch of other questions. You know, if you're a doctor, where did you do your schooling? You know, it can lead to a whole bunch of other questions. Do you like working at the Treehouse Cafe? How long have you been there? What's the job like? What's your favorite part of your job? That's a question that is good. And maybe even what don't you like about your job? And then what made you so interested in becoming a beach volleyball pro? What was it that led you there? I mean, it's asking those kinds of questions that kind of get into why they chose their career and where they've exceeded or grown in their job. So there are a couple of questions as well that we don't want to ask. We don't want to go into, so how much money do you make doing that job? Because that is getting a little personal right out of the gate. So I heard that company is kind of unethical. Do you agree with that? That would put you into a pretty tough position. And I have heard people say, so why would you want to work there? And that's putting obviously a negative spin on what they're doing for their job. So you want to kind of stay away from that. So our next topic is recreation. This is my favorite, because this is really getting into what people like to do. And it really gets into a place where they're talking about what they love, what they enjoy. And there's usually a lot of passion in this set of questions. So it's really getting into what are your hobbies, what are your interests, and it really brings out a bit of a person's personality. If they're a rock climber, you know that they're going to be a little adventurous. If they like to knit or sew, maybe they're a little bit more introverted or a little bit more, or unless they have a knitting group or club. But it puts people into a little more less social situation. And then you can ask something general like, what are you up to this weekend? Or what did you do this weekend? Or have you happened to watch Ted Lasso? Do you know that show? It really starts getting you into a conversation with them about what's important to them. And it's a place for you to really talk about what you like to do as well. It starts creating that bond and that idea of, let's find some common ground, something that we can talk about. In recreation, there are a couple of questions that you sort of want to avoid. Don't say things like, isn't that really expensive? Or isn't that really hard? When we're doing something that we enjoy, we're doing it because we have a passion for it, and we don't need to be judged for expense or is that really hard or whatever. So doing things like that, questions like that may not be productive in keeping the conversation going. So our next and final category in Ford is dreams. This one is not, what did you dream last night? Or did you have a nightmare last night? This is talking about things that you really enjoy doing or want to be doing. It's looking into the future. And some of the questions that you might want to ask to reveal this information is, where do you hope to be in the next few years? What do you hope to be doing? Do you have any plans coming up for travel? Anything on the books? Or is there something that you want to try, something new that you want to try in the future? It's really trying to look forward in what their goals are and what their dreams are about. So there really aren't any wrong questions to ask about dreams. It's really just getting that conversation going about what people are interested in. So part of this conversation as well needs to go two ways. So it's important for you to also be giving of yourself about what your dreams are, what your family is up to, what you love about your job, what your recreation is. And it's important to engage in both directions with that. It also helps us be a little vulnerable, which is important because if somebody is giving of themselves for us, it allows us to be a little bit vulnerable with them as well. And that builds a sense of comfort and ultimately a sense of trust. And that's ultimately what we're looking for, is to be a trusted person and trusted friend. So there are two things that people will pay for. And this is a concept that I learned about a bunch of years ago. And at first it seemed that there has to be way more than two things that people will pay for. But if you look at it, and if you can think of something else, let me know, please. But the two things that people will pay for is pain, which is solving a problem, something that's not good to solve that problem. So it could be something like, your car broke down. Obviously, that's a pain. Obviously, you'll pay money to have that fixed. The second one is pleasure, something that feels good. You know what? I'm going to go on vacation because I really enjoy it. I'm going to go on a cruise, or I'm going to do something that is going to put me into a place of pleasure. So those two things are the things that we need to look for when we're having conversations with other people. What's your pain and what's your pleasure? And when you can figure out what those things are, it allows for you to be there as a trusted advisor. And it also helps you either work through things or talk through things that will put them into a better place. One thing that I like to do is as you're in a discussion and you want to expand on that conversation, is to say, tell me more about that. If somebody says, I am going on a trip and I'm going to be going to Africa, and stops there, I'd want to know more. Tell me more about that. Where are you going to be going? What are you going to be doing? And it allows them to see that you are interested in what they're doing. And that conversation can keep going. Oh, you know what? When I was in Africa, I went to this place. Have you considered going there? It puts you on common ground with things. And along with that is your next question is embedded in their last answer. And what that means is when somebody's telling you about their trip to Africa and they're thinking about going to Zimbabwe, you might want to say, oh, where specifically would you go, or what's drawing you to that location? So listen to what they're saying, because that's going to help you come up with your next question. So one way that I use, and I do this every morning, and if you have time that you're able to do this, I like to get on Facebook first thing in the morning, usually before I'm even out of bed, and just kind of see who's got birthdays today, who has some kind of a change in life, who just went through an experience. Rick, I know, just went to Chicago, ran his first marathon. And I know from the post that he put on Facebook, there were two things there, pain and pleasure all at once. And what it allowed me to do was to use that information and to really talk to him about that. I knew Rick was going on this marathon, so of course we talked about it. But other people, you maybe have found that they lost a loved one, maybe they just, like I said, celebrated a birthday. It gives you a talking point, and it gives you a reason to call people and talk to them and engage with them. So by going through these things, we really are building trust with people. And it really is important that we continue to build those relationships, because the trust is what is not going to only have you build a relationship with them, but in many cases, you as well will be brought into a circle with your friend's friends. So it builds your circle, and building that trust can also help build your business, because you're being brought in as this trusted friend. And it expands not just your friend group, which is very important, but it can also build your business as well.